Hello, and welcome to day two of the Virginia Volunteer Summit. While recapping yesterday's amazing session, I began to think about the great opportunity that we have right before us as individuals and as professionals. We get to wake up each and every day and do something that we are passionate about, and we get to do it for a purpose. This passion may have been sparked in an early experience and has grown and matured into what it is today. So I encourage each and every one of us gathered here today to really take advantage of the information shared throughout today's sessions and know that the work that we do is needed throughout the world. So therefore, it has a purpose. At this time, I would like to see in the chat box what workshops did we attend during our blocks yesterday? This is an opportunity to share and highlight some factors or information that you gathered in these workshops. And if you would, just go ahead and place them in the chat for me. As we're doing that and getting ready for today's session, I'm glad to welcome Cliff Yee, the chair of the Governor's Advisory Board on Service and Volunteerism, to share some remarks. Cliff serves as the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of Northern Virginia Family Services. He brings over 2 decades of professional experience gained in the consulting, financial services, and nonprofit sectors, delivering business results and social value. Cliff earned an MBA from the Peter Drucker School of Management at Claremont Graduate University and a BS in Business Administration from the University of Richmond. Cliff also holds multiple certificates in leadership, business strategy, and nonprofit administration. Additionally, Cliff is a recognized leader within Northern Virginia for his professional and civic engagement. Cliff has been the recipient of numerous honors and awards in recognition of his service, including his leadership on the Fairfax County Economic Advisory Commission, Leadership Greater Washington, and MPA Advisory Council at George Mason University Schar School of Policy and Government. He has also volunteered with the Nonprofit Roundtable of Greater Washington, Northern Virginia Workforce Development Board, and the Tahoe Ray Justice Center, Points of Light Civic Accelerator, Junior Achievement of Greater Washington, and both his alma maters. Cliff and his wife reside in Fairfax, Virginia. Thanks for joining us, Cliff.
Thanks so much, Curtis. It's so great to be here, and welcome everyone to the 2023 Virginia Volunteerism Summit. As Curtis said, as chair of the Virginia Governor's Advisory Board on Service and Volunteerism, I'm so glad to be here for this year's event and to share some thoughts about the important impact that you all have in communities across the Commonwealth. The results from the Virginia Community Engagement Index tell a strong story of volunteerism in Virginia. We saw that Virginians are motivated and driven to give back and feel a sense of fulfillment from helping others. This motivation often leads them to contribute to the communities through formal and informal service to others multiple times a week. These hours spent helping others and doing positive activities in the community are inspiring at the individual level, but also contribute an estimated economic value of over $4 billion. Opportunities for service are so important for the spirit of Virginia and bring us all together for the common good. As Commissioner Danny Avula said yesterday, our work in bringing people together creates a tangible community impact while also helping volunteers connect with a greater purpose. It is a distinct honor to serve on the Governor's Advisory Board for Service and Volunteerism and to see examples of this in communities across the Commonwealth. Our mission is to be proactive in the support of local initiatives, to build stronger communities, and enhance partnerships among the service and volunteer ecosystem. We are so proud to help support the launch of the Serve Virginia campaign and help lead the Serve Virginia partnership. As a board, we believe that our unified voice can be a powerful force for change and look forward to supporting ways Serve Virginia can amplify that importance of service and volunteerism throughout the Commonwealth. Again, I'm so glad to be here on day two to help you all celebrate the 2023 Virginia Volunteerism Summit and engage in learning more about the ways that we can all come together to promote volunteerism across the state. Together, we can truly meet the moment and strengthen Virginia's communities through service, volunteerism, and civic engagement. Curtis, back to you.
Thanks, Cliff, for the information. It is really great to know that we have supports reaffirming our purpose and galvanizing us together to work towards achieving that purpose. Today is focused on putting passion to purpose to work. Yesterday, we talked about pairing our passion and purpose and using that and new tools to expand the conversation about volunteerism. Today, we're going to think about how we do that in the community with each other, with community partners, and with institutions that shape community life. At this time, if you could put in the chat box some community coalitions or groups that you are a part of and share some information on how they work or what makes them work. As we're doing that, I want us to know that we work together in groups of passionate people. There's a lot of power and potential to create serious change. This doesn't always happen automatically, but it's important to think about the way we approach and structure these groups to make measurable, scalable impact. At this time, I'm honored to introduce Maureen Eccleston from the Service Year Alliance to help us think through what this looks like and how important passionate and purposeful partnerships can be. Maureen Eccleston is the Director of Community Partnerships and Service Year Alliance and supports a network of community collaboratives that are designed to increase access to service years and make change at true scale. Maureen is an AmeriCorps alum with over 2 decades of experience in national service. She has worked across most streams of service, including AmeriCorps State and National, VISTA, National Civilian Community Corps, and Learn and Serve. Maureen holds a Master's of Arts in Nonprofit Management and a Bachelor's of Arts in English. Still interested in learning new things, Maureen took up running in 2020 and biking in 2022. She currently resides in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, with her husband and 2 children. Thanks for being with us today, Maureen.
Well, good morning, and thanks so much for having me. It's true that I do still take up new things. This morning I ran 2 miles with my 9-year-old. I hope you all had a lovely morning as well. Again, I'm Maureen Eccleston. I'm so excited to be with you today. I hope you are enjoying your Virginia Volunteerism Summit. I understand that the theme for today is passion and purpose to work. I'm going to add some other P's to that: power and purpose in partnerships. So we're going to talk about partnerships today, and I'm going to encourage you to think differently about partnerships and the overlapping fields of service and volunteerism, about the role of partnerships in building community. But we all have stories about how we got started in this work, and here's mine. I grew up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. My mom was a teacher, and Dad was a maintenance mechanic at a nursing home. His was not a glamorous job. Calls in the middle of the night to fix a clogged toilet or work on a malfunctioning HVAC unit. Long days walking the halls, taking the elevator up and down the 4 floors to fix any number of issues in the residence rooms, kitchens, common spaces. It was enough to make anyone miserable. But not Dad. Dad took his role as a community builder seriously, though he'd absolutely scoff at me for using such a phrase. See, when Dad got on the elevator, he greeted everyone, usually by name. When Dad entered the room of a resident who needed a new light bulb, he'd enter singing. And when there was a down moment, Dad would sit with residents and ask them about their lives or tell jokes, or he'd get them in their wheelchair and take them for walks on the grounds. And that's how I was introduced to volunteerism. On weekends, sometimes after school, I'd join Dad at the nursing home and take the residents for walks. I learned that some folks never had visitors, that without volunteers and people like Dad, they didn't have much opportunity for conversation or sitting out in the sunshine. I learned about building community. And when I was 15, I got my first job at the nursing home. Dinners on the weekdays and lunches on the weekends, I'd serve meals and feed residents who couldn't do so themselves. And I used what Dad taught me about relationships and community. I also saw how important it was to develop partnerships. After meals, it was my job to take a cart around to all the rooms in the North Wing to offer juice and cookies. My counterpart, another high schooler who had the high honor of wearing the same pink polyester elastic-waisted uniform dress that I did, was responsible for the South Wing. But we discovered something. If we worked together, both of us on the North Wing and both on the South, we were better at our jobs. We filled in gaps. We got to know all of the residents' likes and dislikes. So when one of us was out, we could easily fill in for the other. Mr. John liked prune juice and a chocolate chip cookie, and Miss Annie preferred apple juice and an oatmeal cookie. We also had a lot more fun, and we were faster. So when we finished with the juice and cookies, we could clock out and go home. Or we could visit with residents, tell jokes, and listen to their stories, and build community. Our jobs may have been feeding folks and delivering juice and cookies, but because we worked together as partners, and because of the model of my dad, we were able to have a greater impact on those we served. I'm so grateful to have had that grounding in the power and purpose of partnerships. My first volunteer experience alongside my dad, my first job with a coworker who helped me maximize impact. Who knew that would put me on a path to speaking to you today? I've now spent my entire career in the field of service and volunteerism. I launched my career through serving in AmeriCorps, and I now serve as the Director of Community Partnerships with Service Year Alliance. At Service Year Alliance, we are laser focused on our mission, ensuring that service years, paid full-time national service like those in AmeriCorps and Peace Corps and Youth Build, become a common expectation and opportunity for all young people in the country. Fundamental to our mission is our belief that service years transform lives, strengthen communities, and fuel civic renewal. We envision a future where when you enter a room of people you don't know, there's a common conversation starter that is way better than weather or traffic. It's asking, where do you serve? And knowing that everyone will have an answer. We know that a culture like this gets its start in part in community volunteerism. We know that a strong culture of volunteerism benefits a culture of service years and can lead to more people serving in programs like AmeriCorps. We believe that volunteerism efforts and service year efforts can and should be consistently learning from each other and complementing each other. Now, our mission to make that year of paid full-time service, a service year, a common expectation and opportunity for all young Americans. We do this by inspiring and equipping others, including organizations, young people, employers, higher education institutions, and policymakers. Our focus is on expansion, mainly to build support from external stakeholders to make national service successful. We also focus on recruitment, bringing the next generation of youth into national service, modernizing their experience using serviceyear.org, and aligning the field around shared recruitment efforts and systems. And lastly, we focus on impact and fostering collaborative approaches to demonstrate the impact of service years by lifting up exemplary programs and communities. I'm excited to talk with you about this one particular piece of our work at Service Year Alliance, Service Year Impact Communities. Because when we talk about the power and purpose in partnerships and how it can increase our impact, we can pull from examples of community-level collaboratives that are doing just that. Service Year Impact Communities are laying the foundation for reaching a shared vision for service in communities and are examples of how national service can be scaled to meet the needs of communities all across the country. So what is a Service Year Impact Community? Simply put, it's a collaborative at the neighborhood, city, county, regional, or state level that exists to increase the impact of service year programs. In these communities, service year programs like AmeriCorps and AmeriCorps Seniors, along with stakeholders from local government, higher ed, workforce development, foundations, and more, agree to work together to increase the number of service year opportunities or decrease barriers to service so that they're open to all. They may agree to build out pathways from service to career or increase civic renewal, and of course, meet unmet needs in local communities. We know that national service is a powerful strategy in a community's toolbox for addressing local needs that range from developing future leaders to increasing a region's economic mobility and supporting talent pipelines into careers, increasing educational attainment and advancement, and supporting disaster preparedness and recovery. National service offers invaluable experiences that support hands-on learning and, in some places, even workplace credentials that can foster economic development and advance connections to workforce development needs. Our impact communities are a diverse network that foster relationships with champions and work to bring universal national service to life in their communities. They develop relationships at the local level to advance national service and share best practices among practitioners, local elected officials, and others in the field. Let me give you an example of how this kind of purposeful partnership can increase impact. And as I do, I want you to think about what partnerships exist in your community that you can build on to increase your impact and the impact of volunteerism across Virginia. In 2011, community partners in Flint, Michigan came together with a vision to use national service to meet local needs. Their work started with an idea, and because of the commitment and leadership in the community and a willingness to start meeting to bring this idea to life, the Flint National Service Accelerator was born. The accelerator is led by the United Way of Genesee County with support from the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. Having a backbone organization and an initial funder behind an effort to expand and utilize national service was critical to the accelerator's success. But at its core, Flint was able to grow national service from 25 core members to more than 350 because they took initiative. When it felt daunting, they put meetings on the calendar and started having conversations with local leaders and nonprofit organizations in Flint to better understand how national service could be utilized to lift up the community long term. There are other examples. In several impact communities, the collaboratives have worked to develop emergency assistance funds. So when an AmeriCorps member has an unexpected expense, a medical bill, or a surprise hike in their electric bill or a car problem, it doesn't knock them out. Instead, because of the collaboratives, these members are given cash payments to help them over the humps. In other communities, service year programs are coming together to provide training for staff and core members across multiple organizations. They are sharing recruitment efforts. They are hosting events to recognize service and volunteerism across their communities. This kind of purposeful partnership takes work, but there's real payoff. Staff across organizations can learn from and lean on each other. Core members recognize that they're part of something bigger. Elected officials and funders see a service movement rather than individual programs and projects. There are lessons here for your volunteer programs and initiatives. In structure and approach, impact communities draw heavily from the theories of collective impact. A collaborative approach in which a group of cross-sector organizations come together to solve an agreed upon community need or social problem. There can be multiple solutions to the problem, but all of the organizations collaborate in tandem using shared metrics of success to systemically work toward the same outcome. Collective impact efforts use multiple interventions to solve one core problem. Impact communities use one intervention, service years, to solve for one or more problems in a defined place. So you can see how you can apply this to community volunteerism efforts. Multiple challenges, one intervention, volunteerism. Volunteerism, like service years in AmeriCorps, can be a flexible and resilient tool that can address both chronic and emerging challenges in a community. So what do you need to do and how can you start? For any impact community to be successful, there are three main elements that can set you up for success: structure, purpose, and resiliency. Structure. Think about the components you need in place to lead a coalition, a purposeful partnership. Who can serve as the backbone organization, taking on the role of convener? Can you secure dedicated staff or even a portion of someone's time to dedicate to the collaborative? And of course, who should be in the coalition of partners? Purpose. When you pull your partners together, what is the shared vision for your community? Do you want to set a strategy that includes metrics for success, or do you want to keep it more open and high level? And resiliency. What elements can you put in place as you form your collaborative to ensure that it can be sustained? This could be thinking through knowledge management or planning in advance for leadership turnover. One model we've seen across multiple impact communities is that of shared leadership, co-chairs, for instance. That way, none of the work is reliant on any one person or organization. That kind of purposeful partnership can maintain the coalition when there's turnover. Imagine it in your community, your city or county, your neighborhood or region. Structure, purpose, resiliency. Who are your purposeful partners? What can you do tomorrow to start building a collaborative so volunteerism is the tool that is strong and flexible in meeting community needs? What is your vision for partnerships that lift up the power of volunteerism? I'm happy to share the link for Service Year Alliance's Impact Community Toolkit so that you can dive into this more. You'll find more on the elements of an impact community, as well as examples from our network of impact communities. At Service Year Alliance, we are working toward the day when service years are a common expectation and opportunity for all young people, because we know that service years transform lives, strengthen communities, and fuel civic renewal. And so does volunteerism. Purposeful partnerships in volunteerism, like in impact communities, and like my partnership as a high schooler working in a nursing home and a volunteer alongside my dad, build stronger communities. And just like my initial experiences in that nursing home, partnerships across volunteer initiatives makes it all more fun and more impactful. Impact, community building, sharing and collaboration, and maybe a bit of fun. That's the power of purposeful partnerships. I thank you for the opportunity to join with you today, and thank you for all that you do to strengthen our communities through service and volunteerism.
Hi, Maureen. Thank you so much for your wise words. I think that it's so impactful to hear about how other people got into this work, and to kind of see how these paths can lead us in a variety of different directions to where we are today. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to introduce myself if we haven't already met or we don't already know each other. My name is Annalise Gamble, and I'm the statewide engagement officer here at Serve Virginia. Excited to be with you today. I'm excited to talk a little bit more with Maureen about this idea of structure, purpose, and resiliency, right? Because I know that a lot of us are coming to this conference from communities that have different examples of how partners come together to get work done. And it can be, Maureen, like you were saying, anything as informal as two organizations that throw their fundraiser together, all the way through to really dynamic coalitions that are trying to, reduce food insecurity or promote housing, resources and affordability and different things like that. And so I'd love to get a little bit more of your thoughts on the structure piece of it and how some of that can get started. So I'm just thinking about if there's an organization that is thinking like, wow, I'd love to start these conversations and start bringing folks to the table. How would you recommend folks start thinking about who their partners are and kind of figuring out what seats on the bus folks need to start filling?
Sure. So one of the pieces of structure that we think is really important is a backbone organization. We've all been part of group projects that go well, and we've probably all been part of group projects that don't go really well. And one of the reasons is that there is someone who needs to sit in that role of convener. And so that might be some of the folks in this room right now who have the capacity to be the convener, or maybe they can convene alongside someone else, that co-chair model that I talked about. I think in terms of who should be at the table, start small. Start with a small group of folks who are going to have the capacity and the interest in coming together to work on something that can be shared, something that is collaborative. We found that if you have something to rally around, that can help to build momentum for a collaborative. So it might be a shared volunteer appreciation event, right? We all do them to one degree or another. Why not have one that is neighborhood-wide or citywide or county-wide instead of 30 at 30 different organizations? The lift for those events can be quite difficult, so maybe we can parse out the roles for that. So think about who are your 3 to 5 folks at other nonprofits or higher ed, AmeriCorps and service year programs who would be able and willing to come together, set one thing that you want to try and do together, and then share out those roles.
Yeah, I love that idea of not necessarily needing to look at every organization in your community and, figure out ways for everyone to come together, but really kind of, and even, trial testing it out, right? Of pick an event that you're already going to do anyway and figure out, what if we invited these 2 organizations to co-host with us? And then that's kind of a good way to figure out how they work, how you work, if there's maybe a cohesive partnership that can come out of, that work, doing that work together. And I think that that's a really inspiring and smart way to kind of get things started with a little bit less of kind of that daunting, okay, I need to find everybody in my community who, can play a part in this. I think that's really, really wise. When we were doing the Virginia Community Engagement Index, we had this framework in our head of, where folks needed to come from. And then once we sort of made the realization of we're going to forget people, right? Of there's always going to be more people to add at the end of the day. It really kind of helped open up our structure a little bit. So we were able to sort of get started. And I think that sometimes that can be one of the hardest pieces, is just kind of setting that first meeting or figuring out how to start small and grow bigger.
That's right. Don't let perfection stop you. You don't need to have found everyone. Start with a small cohort, set a model, test some things out, go from there.
Absolutely. And I think that goes really well into the next topic of purpose, right? And thinking about the purpose for your partnership network or coalition. And I think that what's really inspiring about impact communities is oftentimes it feels like the purpose is focused on the scope of the need instead of the scope of the capacity. And I was just wondering if you have any thoughts on kind of how folks get there, right? Of if, Flint, Michigan, for example, where they were able to exponentially increase the number of AmeriCorps members that they have serving in their community. And I'm sure that wasn't done based off of thinking of okay, well, if we have this many AmeriCorps this year, this is how we can, increase year over year to get to this goal. It was more thinking about, well, if we need folks serving in this many roles, then, how do we start bringing those 2 things together? And I'm curious if there's any process or thoughts that you have on how organizations can start looking at the need in its totality and then figuring out how to bring those 2, the need and their capacity together, instead of kind of just focusing on how to use the resources that they have.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it really is about developing a shared vision. And so I think the first step is, are you thinking more like a collective impact community where you have one goal that you all want to meet around, a population-based change? Is it that you're all working towards increased maternal health, right? And then you have different ways of getting there. Or is your shared vision that you want more volunteers, or you want volunteerism to be better recognized in your community, in which case your focus is on the tool of volunteerism, not what those different volunteers are doing. So I think that's step one. What we've seen several impact communities do is pull together key partners for a day in person, if we can even remember those times, or virtually, so that there can be a shared visioning session, right? What are your top values? What would you like to see? What are the possibilities that could happen if we pool some of our resources, if we work together, and just spend some time really developing that shared vision? And remember, it could be something with real metrics that you're setting benchmarks and outcomes and measuring toward it, or it could be much more open and high level than that. The beauty of impact communities is that while they have similarities, they're all different because these are place-based initiatives. And so it's local solutions to local needs with local resources.
Yeah, I love that, because I think that, there's something to be said for being able to meet a scalable need, right? Of like, if there are lots of hungry people in your community, then being able to meet the needs of everyone is really admirable and really great. But sometimes if what's most needed in your local community is a stronger spirit around volunteerism and community engagement, then sometimes that's a better place to start, right? And so I love that idea of sort of really taking a step back and thinking, what's the need here that we want to address with this program or this partnership, and thinking creatively about how that gets done. And then you still get to accomplish your work, right, as an organization, but thinking about what your buy-in to the partnership model could be. I think that's really wise. And I'd love to talk about resiliency. I know that we've probably all been a part of a partnership, and not that anybody else has had this experience, but I may have been a part of a, a network at some point that had a great leader. They got a lot of work done for a year, and then that person moved on, and then the meetings kept going, but there wasn't really an outcome, that kind of thing. And so I love the idea of co-chairs and kind of sharing responsibility. I'm curious if there's other things that impact communities have learned around kind of ways to keep the work going and not necessarily have it rest all on the shoulders of one person or one organization.
I think this is the hardest component of the three, is resiliency. And like you said, Annalise, we've all been part of organizations or networks or collaboratives where there's one brilliant, stellar leader who inspires us all. And then that brilliant, stellar leader gets scooped up by somebody else. And we are left wondering how we do the work, right? There's a hole in that. And so this is where that purposefulness around partnership and collaboration is so essential. It cannot be happenstance, and it cannot be reliant on one person or one organization. We have seen the co-chair model work to help with that, so that when one person, for any number of reasons, turns out of that position, there's someone else who has the knowledge management and can bring someone else up along with them.
Yeah.
We've also seen written agreements across impact communities, so that the organizations that are participating actually have, just like a volunteer position description, a clear expectation of what their role is in the work, and they sign it every year so that they are recommitting to a collaborative. So in order to have resilient impact communities, we do have to put some of those structures in place. We do have to make sure that it truly is a collaborative effort across multiple organizations, multiple people. Otherwise, you'll have a fantastically exciting start, and then it might just fizzle out when that wonderful leader moves on.
Yeah, and I love that idea of recommitment. We all get stuck on those listservs, and years later, we're kind of like, why am I still getting these emails? I don't work in this organization anymore. And so I think that that's really smart, of kind of having a structure in which you can kind of build in these points to say, hey, if this isn't working for you anymore, or you can't, fulfill these commitments or this role, then that's fine, right? And like making space at the table for the folks that want to be there and are going to get something out of it, instead of kind of keeping folks at the table that like don't necessarily have an aligned vision anymore, right? And so I love that idea of investment goes both ways, right? Of like both what organizations are going to bring and invest in the partnership, but then also making sure that the investment is worth their while, and that the folks that want to be there are, really getting a shared investment out of their work. That's really great. Any other thoughts that you think would be really helpful as we kind of consider starting impact communities in our own communities?
Well, I did share in the chat. It's a very long link, but it's the direct link to the toolkit that we have at Service Year
It's one
Alliance.
of my favorites. I share it all the
time. For developing impact communities. We'll fully admit this toolkit is really about impact communities focused around service years. But as I shared today, I think that the model itself is very applicable to volunteerism. And so I'd encourage folks to take a look, to pull with it the nuggets that you're going to be able to apply in your community, and just give it a shot.
That's awesome. And in addition to so we had a question, and if folks have questions, I'd love for you to put them in the Q&A so that we can, Maureen and I can talk about them. But we had a question about structure for collaboration. And I know that the Impact Community Toolkit does kind of outline a little bit of that collective impact model. So thinking about, is there a backbone organization, how to sort of create committees, or, have chairs of different areas of the partnership. But are there any frameworks or models that you've seen work really well in this in this space of kind of organizing the collaboration, other than just kind of that community impact framework?
I'm going to try to answer your question.
I was going to say, that's kind of a complicated question.
As I said, every impact community looks a little bit different, and I think that is exciting. So, for instance, in Central Texas, in the Austin area, the way they are formed is everyone in the collaborative kind of pools some funds together. And with that, they have a long-term consultant who serves as the convener, right? So someone who can really focus on setting the agendas for committee meetings. And then they have multiple committees. They have an executive director committee, program director committee, a DEI committee, all the different initiatives and ways to bring those collaboratives together. In other cities and regions and states, the backbone organization is an organization that maybe has a service year program. And so they're already invested in this work, and now they're bringing other folks together along with them. And I would say the scale of what folks are doing in different communities also varies. So some are very focused on shared recruitment, right? Recruitment is a challenge for employers, for service year programs like AmeriCorps, and for volunteerism. So what are the ways that these impact communities can come together to focus on recruitment? And maybe that's the one thing that they focus on. Yeah. Others are structured by having, as I said, co-chairs and various committees that are focused on breaking down barriers to service or growing new service year programs. So I think that there are those elements to structure that are important: a backbone organization, some shared leadership, a true collaborative, and how deep or intricate you want to go is going to depend on your community needs and assets.
And it sounds like, too, kind of going back to that idea of like organizations making commitments and receiving something for their commitment, of organizing around, different areas to make that possible might also be a motivating structure. I'm thinking of the way Flint is organized, having kind of a programs focus, and that kind of like focusing on the national service model. And then there's, a funding focus, thinking about how does this keep going? And so kind of thinking about the different role or purposes that the partnership provides really helps to kind of structure how they're organized and how they keep, the different elements going. We also had a comment in the chat that I think is really helpful, of recommending folks to look at their community health needs assessment and local government strategic plans, and kind of using those in that dynamic to kind of help assess sort of what the shared needs are, right? Or what the shared vision could be. I think that's a really great point. So in that spirit, I'm going to pull up a friend of the commission, Paul Manning. He has two AmeriCorps programs now in the city of Richmond that really kind of focus on this idea of shared partnerships coming together to really kind of meet a purposeful goal. And so a lot of the model has been built around this idea of how do we bring partners together to make this program work. And so, Paul, grateful to have you. Thank you for joining us today, and would love to hear a little bit more from your perspective on the role of partnerships in your AmeriCorps programming.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can.
And for some reason, I don't think you can see me. Can you see me?
See you.
You can?
We cannot see you, but if you want to, we can hear you great.
Okay, well, I'll try to make myself visible too, but thanks again, Annalise, for having me this morning. Maureen, glad to share the virtual stage with you. And yeah, it's been an exciting ride. I've been with the city now for, 12 years plus, and been the director of the AmeriCorps program for that entire period. And so we've now launched into our second AmeriCorps program by way of the Public Health AmeriCorps grant. So we're excited about that. That's going to launch this September. So yeah, the collaborative effort that we've created over the years with various partners has been instrumental. Mayor Stoney's vision of One Richmond includes that inclusive, collective, collaborative approach. And there's no one entity, even us as a local government, no one can do everything and do it well. So finding partners who have expertise in different spaces is important. So it was mentioned before that notion of a backbone agency. So the city of Richmond certainly acts and serves as a backbone agency. which really frees up our partners to on the ground, not have to worry about HR stuff and fiscal, payroll, et cetera. And they can really focus on engaging and working with the AmeriCorps members to provide great direct service to program beneficiaries. So it's been great for us. It's been impactful in many ways. And yeah, just excited about the partnership.
Yeah. I'm curious, Paul, from your perspective, what keeps the city going as the backbone organization? Like, what's the core either motivation or benefit that that you all derive from, participating in the partnership?
Well, as you know, the city of Richmond is like Charles Dickens's book, The Tale of Two Cities. We've had a phenomenal history as one of the oldest cities in the nation, but we've also had a tragic history as well. And so we've got great needs. While the city of Richmond, like many mid and major cities, are experiencing great renewals, we know when after Jim Crow, great things happen, but then very deep and negative things happen. And so impoverished neighborhoods, the establishment of public housing, and just, the creation of systemic negative issues. And so we still deal with some of those things, from deep poverty, poor education, life quality at a very low level. So having this collaboration really helps us as a city, because again, we cannot do everything. It's impossible for the city to do everything. So the incredible nonprofits, so we have NPOs, we have a partnership, we have state government, we have higher education, all together working to address some of these great plaguing issues that consistently are before us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know just personally, a lot of your partners are organizations that would already be working with the city in other ways anyway. And so it's a really great way to kind of see, oh, there you go. There you are. To see additional ways to sort of pull your partners in and kind of keep them connected and engaged in the work, and really being able to show kind of the totality of the impact of kind of what everyone's doing on their own, and really being able to show that citywide.
Definitely, and you all know with AmeriCorps we have the grant requisite for grantee share, and so because we are the city of Richmond, we have a substantial budget, more so than many nonprofits. So it really takes that burden off of them. We can carry that and then help them to do the things that they do best that we can't do. So it's a great partnership.
Yeah, and really, Maureen, I'm thinking it harkens back to the idea of what folks can commit to and what they're going to benefit from as a part of the partnership. And so really thinking that structure kind of plays well in sort of that sustainability framework of like thinking about, making sure that people have a reason to continue participating and kind of using that to keep things going. I'm curious, Paul, how the purpose, so Maureen shared an example of organizations coming together to kind of do a day of shared visioning. I'm curious how the shared purpose was set in your partnership collaborative.
Yeah, so I think the City of Richmond AmeriCorps program is probably 16, 17 years old now in the running, but we've had different iterations, different focus areas over those 16 years. And so right now, so we have two programs. And one of those programs, Our Hopes, which stands for Richmond Healthy Futures, Opioid Prevention and Environmental Stewardship, that focus area began, I think, about 6 years ago with our partners in the community, and specifically focus on the opioid prevention and prescription drug epidemic. We've added a couple of different programs later, but that was the primary one where we really were intentional in reaching out to community partners, because we as a city, we don't focus on delivering that service to the community, right? So finding great partners from DC Ramsey Recovery, the McShin Foundation, Real Life, some other partners who have expertise, they have experience, they have just a track record of producing results. And so it was just a natural. We know that epidemic is with us. It's growing, and so we had to address it. But the city couldn't address it directly, so creating a partnership just made total sense.
That's awesome. I want to thank you both for your time today and for sharing your words of wisdom about kind of how these partnerships really have a strong purpose and really help us accomplish a lot in communities and at whatever level we try and set our sights at. I'd like to just kind of open it up if you guys have any closing thoughts or any advice for folks that are thinking about, starting a new partnership. Wanted to kind of give space for that.
Yeah, Annalise, thank you for the opportunity. And Paul, it's lovely to share space with you as well and hear about some of the exciting work that you have going in Richmond. I think it's just about getting started, right? It's hard work to develop partnerships. The payoff is absolutely worth it. And I think you heard that just now from Paul of the increased impact, the increased services that you can make happen in a community through partnership. And so I encourage folks to not leave this conversation on your screen today, to actually take it into your work, to think about the one or two things that you can do tomorrow to develop or build on a new partnership.
Absolutely. Thanks, Maureen. And let us know in the chat if you guys are interested in a follow-up training to this on how to get started. We would love to support you guys in that way. So thank you, everyone, for being here this morning. Thanks for joining our first session. We are really excited and honored to go into our next session, which is going to be the 2023 National Service Awards. So this session will end, and we will see you in the next session, which is going to be the 2023 National Service Awards, where we get to honor the service and impact of national service members and alum across the state. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye.